Mental Wellness Day, and it's so important we talk about this because a new CDC report found that the state of teens' mental health is in dire
That's
straits.
true. It was published last month, and it found that teens across the board reported more mental health struggles. More specifically, girls, along with teens who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and questioning their sexual orientation, are at higher risk for depression, emotional stress, and suffering violence. And this report didn't look at gender identity, but several others have found that transgender youth are also at risk for depression, anxiety, and self-harm.
So now that we've established the state of teen mental health, how can parents have conversations with their kids and better support them? Joining us once again is Dr. Thea Gallagher, a clinical psychologist and assistant professor with NYU Langone Health. Dr. Gallagher, good morning. Welcome to the show. This is an important topic for many.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we're talking about it because I think it's highlighting how vulnerable teens are and that we need to be addressing some of these issues in real ways.
Yeah. First, can you talk to us a little bit about the significance of the report and some of the findings? Because I feel like some of this at least has been around, but to have a governing body like the CDC or some sort of governmental arm address it sort of brings the severity to it.
Yeah, I think the data is really remarkable, right? That we're seeing that 40% of teens are feeling sad, hopeless, depressed, increases in suicidal thinking. I think that data is highlighting that our adolescents, our teens are really suffering and struggling. And I think it's really a call to action that we have to do something about it now that we know. And I think that's the best thing about data, right? When we get it, we have to do something with it and realizing that these problems are getting worse.
Now, talking about kids, obviously, they're all attending schools. The report includes, again, suggestions specifically for schools. Can you talk to us about those findings?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's about having these conversations, creating more anti-harassment, trainings, being able to bring a light to this and having creating a better culture in the schools as well, because that's where kids spend a lot of their time. That's where teens are spending a lot of their time. So how do we kind of bring some of these interventions into the schools and into the classroom, create the conversations, create the support groups, more education, more support for these teens who are really struggling?
As you all know, I'm the mother of two teenagers, and their schools have these support groups for their students, for our children. And what I've noticed in the 15 years that they've been in school is the last 2 years, these support groups now talk about social media. And I bring this up because social media is now playing into this conversation because TikTok just announced it's setting a 60-minute screen time limit for users under 18. What do you make of that decision? Do you think it will really help? And I also wonder, not that you can answer this, how does TikTok manage this?
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, well, I think, it's a step in the right direction, right? I think we realize that teens and ourselves, we need limits on our social media consumption. And I think that needs to be a part of the education process, helping teens realize, how do I feel after I spend hours on TikTok or Instagram? And maybe some of these reminders like, hey, you've had 60 minutes, time to get off, might be a really good way to have more intentional consumption with our social media. And I think as we all have kind of just been victim to social media taking over the world. But if we can be more intentional with the amount of time that we spend, because ultimately it's going to do better for us if we can set those limits and boundaries. And if we can teach teens how to start doing it at this level, it might be something that we see change in the long term as well.
Now, what about, I know from the parenting standpoint, and I was lucky enough actually with my kids, while I had early hours, we always sat down and had dinner together as a family. And I could always take the temperature of the room, and you could really see if there was something changing in their behavior, if they were getting quieter for some reason, or just responding differently. Parents who don't have the opportunity to do that per se, but what's the best way for them to initiate a conversation with their kids about their mental health?
I think you bring up a great point. Like, if you can't do dinners every night and you don't have those spaces, how can you create some of those spaces? And I've had parents talk to me about the fact that, they're driving their kid home from school or late at night, when they're, talking to them before bed, all of a sudden, they're kind of like sharing what's going on with them. So I think, it might not be a perfect time in your schedule or in your life, and you might have had a long day, but I think when your teens are sharing and they're starting to talk to you, listen, be engaged, and try to create those spaces of showing you care. I also think sharing about your own experiences, that life is hard and it has been hard for you at different times in your life. I think feeling like we're joined together in the fact that we all deal with and manage struggles can be really helpful and can be really normalizing for a teen who might feel really alone and might be suffering in silence.
Yeah. You talk about the car. because I'm one of those families where we all have different schedules, so and I would love to do it around the dinner table, but what I have found is I do talk to my children in the car and they sit in the back, because since we don't have we can't look at each other eye to eye, I find that they're more open because they can't look at my face.
Yeah, right.
And so I've really used that as a tool to get my children to open up when I know that they're struggling with something. So those of you at home, try taking a ride with them in the car. To that point, what are some of the warning signs that teens may be experiencing? Because I see a lot of, I'm good, I'm fine, everything's great, and then, it's not.
Yeah, you want to look for, social isolation. You want to look for maybe they're pulling out of their extracurriculars all at once. Maybe a friend of theirs calls you or tells you, hey, I'm worried about your child. I've seen some, concerning behaviors. You want to look out for self-harm. You want to see if they're looking at life through what seems like maybe a more negative lens, like everything is feeling heavy or overwhelming, and maybe they're sleeping more, sleeping less. Maybe they're eating more, eating less. You want to kind of start to look at maybe some of the things that aren't what they're saying, but what they're doing, because behavior can be such a great indication of how someone is feeling, and they might not even know that they are experiencing internal changes. And so I think if you can look at those, observe them, highlight them, and then make sure you're trying to address the deeper concerns with your child.
So once you as a parent, and for that matter the child, become aware maybe something is wrong here, something's going on, we need to bring in a professional, a therapist. What are some tips in terms of trying to find the right therapist to work with your child?
I think if you can make it a collaborative process, that's great. Like, hey, let's see who our insurance covers, or let's look on some of these websites where you can find a therapist and see, what are your preferences? What might seem interesting to you? Maybe even educating them about the process of therapy. If you have a friend who is a therapist, maybe you could even say, hey, you want to talk to them just even about what this might look like. Or start it with like, hey, I just want you to go one time and have a consult and see if you can connect with someone. This is a person that you can go talk to that isn't your parent. And so you can tell them anything and everything, and you don't have to feel like you're burdening them. So I think bring them in the process, explain a little bit about what it is, and also just say, hey, this is to help you. This isn't a punishment. Because I think sometimes people can feel like therapy, especially if their parents want them to go, is like that something's wrong with them and it's a punishment. And I also think if you're going to therapy yourself, that's the best way to get your kid to go, because you could say, hey, practice what you preach here.
Sure.
Dr. Gallagher, to that subject, because I know a lot of children who are in therapy, and I've often heard them say, well, when do I know when I'm done? And conversely, I've heard, I know people who go to therapy twice and then they stop, which to me feels like you're doing more harm. So and I know this is a gray area, but in your experience, what are some of those guidelines? Because it's not enough to just show up, okay, I'm cured, bye.
Right. Not a quick fix.
Right. Yeah. 2 sessions is definitely not enough unless someone went and they realized there's actually not a problem here, or it's another kind of issue that isn't going to be addressed in therapy. But like you said, I think that's really for the therapist to decide with the patient, like when is enough. And like we're saying, though, so many teens are struggling. So maybe if they come in to talk about one issue, maybe it's just general issues that like just being a teen is hard. And so I think if they're benefiting from it, if they're getting something out of it, and if they're in collaboration with the therapist, that this is working and then this is really helpful for them, keep going. There's no harm in it.
Yeah.
Don't suffer in silence, really, is the bottom line here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
As
Dr. Gallagher,
always,
so great to see you.
great
Thank
information.
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right. Be well.